Before an animal moves toward you or away from you, it checks your face, and what it finds there changes everything it does next. This is not a quirk. It is the moment an animal decides whether to trust you, and it is not random. Across dogs, horses, chimpanzees, domestic cats, and even goats, an animal we never bred to read us, researchers have documented the same repeating sequence. The animal faces something uncertain. It turns to a human face. It reads what it finds there. Then it acts. The animal is not running on autopilot. It is actively gathering information, deciding whether the person in front of it reads as a safe signal or a warning. Animal cognition researchers call this social referencing, and the behavior mirrors what human infants do when they glance back at a parent before touching something new and unfamiliar. 5 species, dozens of controlled experiments, and in at least one case, an animal that encountered an angry human expression, then met that same person hours later with a completely neutral face and still responded with weariness. The read had already happened. The animal already knew. Dogs carry the strongest record of this behavior. In one study of 90 pet dogs, each dog faced a mildly frightening object while a nearby person delivered either a positive or a negative emotional signal. Dogs that received the positive signal spent more time approaching the object. Dogs that received the negative signal held back and took longer to move. Every dog looked to the person first. Then every dog decided. The effect was strongest when the person supplying the emotional cue was the dog's owner, not a stranger. Dogs do not treat all faces equally. They weight the signal by relationship. A follow-up study pushed this further. 91 dogs watched 2 unfamiliar people interact, either positively, negatively, or neutrally, then had to choose which person to approach when food was only reachable with help. Dogs applied the emotional information most strongly when it had a direct consequence for getting the food. Dogs can also tell happy faces from angry ones, and they carry that skill to faces they have never seen before, which rules out simple memorization. In a separate experiment, 17 dogs cross-matched visual and auditory emotional cues from both dogs and humans, suggesting the animals read an integrated emotional pattern, not a single isolated feature. Dogs do not just look at faces. They extract usable information and fold that information into their next decision, especially when something is uncertain or at stake. Horses deliver the most striking result of any species studied so far. Researchers showed 28 horses photographs of happy or angry human faces. The horses showed a left gaze bias and a faster heart rate shift in response to the angry images. A photograph, not a live person. The face alone was enough to change the horse's physical state. Then came the finding that sharpens everything. Horses were shown a photograph of a person displaying either an angry or a happy expression. Hours later, those same horses met that same person in a completely neutral emotional state. The horses still behaved differently depending on which expression they had seen earlier, showing more threat-oriented behavior toward the person previously seen as angry. The read had already been filed. The memory of that face, wearing that expression, carried forward in time. Horses also integrate face and voice. When a photographed facial expression and a spoken emotional tone did not match, horses looked longer and oriented faster toward the source, especially when the voice belonged to their caretaker. In a social referencing study with 46 horses, the animals adjusted their behavior toward a novel object based on positive or negative cues a nearby person provided, the same referencing pattern seen in dogs. Many horse experiments rely on photographs or recorded vocalizations rather than fully natural encounters, and several of the strongest results come from a small number of research groups. The pattern holds, but the evidence base is narrower than for dogs. Chimpanzees carry the oldest version of this toolkit. Young chimpanzees used an adult's emotional response to a novel object to regulate their own behavior toward it, the same basic sequence. In a separate study with 6 adult female chimpanzees, the animals followed a human's gaze to a distant location, then checked back to the human's face when nothing interesting appeared there. The chimpanzees also used human gaze to select food when the human could genuinely see the reward, but not when choosing between opaque containers. They were not following head movement indiscriminately. They were reading when the gaze was likely to carry real information. Domestic cats present a quieter but real version of the same behavior. In one social referencing study, 19 of 24 house cats, roughly 79%, displayed referential looking toward their owner when confronted with an ambiguous, mildly frightening object. Their behavior then shifted depending on whether the owner sent a positive or negative signal. Evidence that domestic cats follow human gaze as a referential cue exists, but the testing is difficult enough that researchers began with nearly 100 cats to collect usable data from 41. That dropout rate is part of the honest picture. The capacity appears real, but house cats show it with more variability and stronger context dependence than dogs do. Goats were not domesticated as close visual partners the way dogs were, yet in a problem-solving study with 34 adult goats, the animals gazed earlier and longer toward a forward-facing person than toward one facing away, orienting toward the human who looked available. In a separate study, 20 goats shown photographs of happy versus angry human faces interacted first and longer with the happy faces. Goats appear more responsive to the whole attentive person than to a fine-grained reading of eye direction alone. Across all 5 species, the sequence stays the same. Ambiguity arrives first, then comes the look to the human face. Then the decision follows. What differs is how far each species carries the process. Dogs and horses carry the clearest evidence that a facial expression alone can steer action and that the read persists across time. Chimpanzees show the older primate toolkit: gaze following, checking back, social referencing. Domestic cats show the pattern with more variability. Goats read the whole person's orientation more reliably than the fine detail of eyes in isolation. None of this is mind reading. It is something more grounded. These animals monitor whether a person looks attentive, positive, negative, or positioned to help, and they fold that read into what they do next. The next time an animal pauses before approaching you, it is not hesitating randomly. It is reading your face, and based on what it finds, it is already decided.